ripped from their homes and sent from all across the country to a camp in western North Carolina, all in the name of therapy.
But WBTV's chief investigative reporter Nick Ochsner has uncovered troubling stories and a trail of violations that suggest the program designed to help children may be doing the opposite.
The only thing I heard was my dad say, "I love you, these people are going to take care of you now."
Kathleen Riley is describing the night she was sent to a wilderness camp more than 500 miles from home in 2012.
The man said, "Get the F up, you're going to camp." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." And he had restraints, and he said, "The police have been notified. You are a danger to yourself and others. If you run, I will tackle you. Your flight leaves in 2 hours. We have to leave now."
She was taken to the airport and flown to North Carolina, specifically to a therapeutic wilderness program called Trails Carolina. Trails' website says it's designed to help children and teens with a range of emotional and behavioral disorders, with personalized treatment plans and one-on-one therapy. When Kathleen got there, she was strip searched, given 2 pairs of clothes, and introduced to the group she'd be living in the woods with.
These are called therapeutic wilderness programs.
Yes.
Did you get much therapy?
There's no real therapy that happens.
Conditions were sparse. No plumbing, no buildings, even a 17-day stretch without a shower, she says. A group of nearly a dozen kids with 2 or 3 staff members deep in the woods.
For nearly a week, eyes in Jackson County have turned to the sky and to maps in the search for missing 17-year-old Alec Lansing.
2 years after Kathleen's time at Trails, 17-year-old Alec Lansing died when he ran away from his Trails group, climbed up a tree, fell into a creek, and broke his femur.
Alec Lansing died from injuries and exposure.
He was found dead 12 days later. The investigation report by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services shows Trails staff waited more than 5 hours before calling police to report the missing teen. And the sheriff's deputy involved in the search said they may have been able to find the teen had they been notified in time to send search crews the day he went missing. After DHHS's findings, Trails was given a $12,000 fine and cited for failing to supervise a student. Nothing else happened. In a statement, a DHHS spokeswoman said they found the improper supervision that led to Lansing dying was an isolated incident.
That the people that spend the majority of the time with them are not trained therapists.
Jonathan Hyde worked at Trails for 6 weeks last summer. He was paid minimum wage as a guide.
I had kids that were vocally suicidal. I had kids that tried running away. I had kids that would try and fight you.
With nearly a dozen teens and just 3 staff members, Hyde says adequate supervision was often hard.
Plenty of times where we both had to, 2 out of, the 3 staff had to go focus on one individual. The question of supervision there, effective supervision comes into question.
Hyde says he got just 3 days of training.
If I was a parent, I'd be pretty pissed to find out what the actual therapy that happens. It does happen. It's on a scheduled basis, but the time that they actually meet with a licensed therapist is very minimal.
It harmed all of us, our whole family.
Heidi Riley is Kathleen's mom.
When you made the decision to send Kathleen to Trails, what did you think you were doing?
We thought we were helping her get some therapeutic help.
In a recent letter to North Carolina state senators, a lawyer for Trails Carolina confirmed participants only receive 1 to 2 hours of individual therapy a week and 2 hours of group therapy a month.
So you sent your daughter to get therapy?
Yes.
Is that what she got?
To get help for, yeah. No, I don't think she got that. I think she was emotionally abused. It's tough because that decision, that's a tough one to live with, definitely.
I remember making every night, praying to a God I don't even believe in, saying, if you get me out of here, I promise I will do whatever I can to help whatever child so they don't have to go through this.
What are the long-lasting effects from your time at Trails?
I have severe sleep issues. I have a lot of abandonment issues, a lot of anxiety, panic disorder. It's not normal. It's not humane, and it's just not what it does to your brain. You still don't even want to admit to it. It's just like it's still there, and they have that power over you.
So you spend most of the time in the woods.
Yes.
With people who aren't trained therapists.
No.
But who are
Yes.
but who are deciding what you're doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they call that therapy?
Yeah, part of the process, part of the program.
What would you call it?
Abuse.
Now, Jamie, Maureen, the executive director of Trails Carolina, wouldn't answer our questions on camera, but she did send a statement through a spokeswoman that says, in part, quote, since its founding, Trails has helped make a difference in the lives of more than 2,800 adolescents. Today, we are proud of all that our 200-employee workforce does to help others.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. A WBTV investigation is pulling back the curtain on a camp in the mountains of North Carolina called Trails Carolina. It claims to provide therapeutic wilderness experiences for children with mental and behavioral disorders. But as we first told you tonight at 6 o'clock, some who have experienced the program say they got the opposite. WBTV's chief investigative reporter Nick Oxner spoke with one woman who described being taken from her home in the middle of the night, brought to the camp, and subjected to months of unclean conditions and what she calls psychological abuse. The camp is licensed by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. But what are regulators doing to protect children?
Deputies say he left a camp for at-risk teens.
When 17-year-old Alec Lansing ran away from Trails Carolina in November 2014, it took staff more than 5 hours to call for help. And it took 12 days to find him dead after he fell from a tree into a creek and broke his femur.
Alec Lansing died from injuries and exposure.
The local sheriff's office told investigators with the Department of Health and Human Services that had they been called sooner, they would have had a much better chance of finding the teen. So, what did the state do? They fined Trails $12,000 and let the facility keep operating.
I do believe that there is things that the company could have done to have made for a safer environment.
Jonathan Hyde worked as a guide at Trails for about 6 weeks last summer, years after Lansing died. He was typically one of 3 staff, none trained as therapists, sent to the woods to supervise a group of roughly 10 high-risk teens.
I had kids that were vocally suicidal. I had kids that tried running away. I had kids that would try and fight you.
To prepare him for his new job, which paid minimum wage and came with long hours, Hyde got 3 days of rush training. Even though Trails recently claimed in a letter to North Carolina state senators, staff undergo a rigorous 5-day training. While Hyde was in the woods, the teens he was responsible for keeping safe only saw a therapist for 1 hour a week.
For the amount of money that I have a general idea of what they're charging for this, if I was a parent, I'd be pretty pissed to find out what the actual therapy that happens.
I remember making every night praying to a God I don't even believe in, saying, if you get me out of here.
Kathleen Riley went to Trails in 2012.
We went once without 17 days without showering. Yeah, we were denied basic hygiene all the time. That was, again, and I thought, oh, it's just part of the process, yeah. I mean, we're in the woods.
So you spend most of the time in the woods.
Yes.
With people who aren't trained therapists.
No.
But who are
Yes.
but who are deciding what you're doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they call that therapy?
Yeah, part of the process, part of the program.
What would you call it?
Abuse.
Inspection records from DHHS showed Trails was cited for 50 deficiencies between 2010 and 2019, including improper medication handling 10 times, failure to protect participants from harm, abuse, and neglect 4 times, and improper use of seclusion, physical restraint, and isolation 4 times. None of those, among the dozens of other violations, led to DHHS taking any real action against Trails. And it's been 2 years since the program was last inspected. We wanted to ask a DHHS leader how a program where a child died and inspectors have found so many problems is still operating, but they refused to answer our questions on camera. Instead, they sent a statement defending their handling of the incident after the teen died and saying, quote, Trails Carolina was not found to have substantially failed to comply with the applicable laws and regulations such that DHHS could suspend or revoke their license pursuant to North Carolina law. DHHS records show Trails' last 3 inspections were done in 2016, 2018, and 2019. Even though state regulations require inspections every 12 to 15 months. An agency spokeswoman said inspections were suspended during the pandemic, even though Trails Carolina continued to operate. Kathleen Riley, who spent 3 months at Trails in 2012, is still struggling nearly a decade after her experience.
The trauma that these people live with, even my parents or myself, it's beyond cruel. It's you know, I didn't ask for this, but I was told I deserved it so many times every day.
Trails Carolina's website advertises a long list of therapeutic offerings aimed at helping struggling children and teens, including therapy, group therapy, even wellness programming.
There's no real therapy that happens.
Kathleen Riley went to Trails in 2012. We spoke with her last month about her experience.
So you spend most of the time in the woods.
Yes.
With people who aren't trained therapists.
No.
But who are
Yes.
but who are deciding what you're doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they call that therapy?
Yeah, part of the process, part of the program.
What would you call it?
Abuse.
And former staff member Jonathan Hyde, who worked as a wilderness guide last summer at Trails, cast doubt on the program too.
Plenty of times where we both had to, 2 out of, the 3 staff had to go focus on one individual. The question of supervision there, effective supervision comes into question.
Hyde says he got just 3 days of training.
If I was a parent, I'd be pretty pissed to find out what the actual therapy that happens.
Trails Carolina is one of just 3 wilderness therapy programs licensed in the state, regulated by the Department of Health and Human Services. DHHS refused to answer our questions about what the agency does to ensure participants are getting safe, effective therapy the program advertises.
Recording in progress.
But that changed last week.
This setting, except for the fact it's in the wilderness, is not that different than other facilities that also deal with high-risk youth.
So you don't think that being in the woods with a tent and no running water, you don't think that's different than a child being at a therapeutic setting on a campus somewhere?
So I think regardless of whether the child is in a therapeutic setting at a campus or in the woods, in a tent, in a very primitive setting, I think both are situations where, the youth are high risk.
Emery Milliken is Deputy Director of DHHS's Division of Health Service Regulation, which inspects Trails and thousands of other licensed facilities in the state. The law requires DHHS to inspect Trails every 12 to 15 months. But records show the agency has sometimes gone longer. DHHS did not visit Trails at all in 2017 or 2020. DHHS says it suspended inspections due to COVID. But a former staff member says Trails was busier than ever last year.
We are looking to determine whether or not a facility is complying with those regulations, which, if they are, should mean that children are getting the therapy that they need in a safe and appropriate environment.
Yeah, but we've heard from multiple participants at Trails Carolina that said they didn't get the therapy they need. So you're saying that we're making sure they're getting the therapy. We're hearing from people who've been through the program saying we didn't get the therapy. Those two things don't add up.
So whenever we receive a complaint that either a facility is, not performing as expected, or if there are allegations of abuse or neglect or of lack of quality in the care, that's something we want to hear about.
But what is DHHS actually doing to ensure that children in the woods are being properly cared for and getting the treatment they're supposed to get outside of looking at a treatment plan and showing up every 14 months? Is DHHS doing anything else to make sure that these children are actually safe?
Certainly, Nick, you have to respect the fact that we don't actually run these facilities. These are not our facilities.
No, but you license
we're not
them.
in charge of the operation of the facility.
No, but you
We
license
are a
them.
regulator. I'm sorry, I was trying to finish. So yes, we do license them. And meanwhile, we have rules and laws that we're required to follow in our regulation and oversight of the facility. And so that's what we do.
So you can't actually tell me what you do to make sure children who are out in the woods are actually safe.
I think I did just tell you that.
Reporting in Charlotte, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side.